Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tangle Time Arts. My name is Nana Heron, and I'm a certified Zentangle teacher. And we're here for week 20, I believe, of our weekly tangles. And I thought we would continue our study of grid type tangles with something a little bit different, though. There are a couple of alternative grid tangles, and we're going to take a quick look at one called pinch. And because it's a little different from the others, we'll just focus on that and see how it goes. So for this project, we'll just keep it very basic with a white tile and our black pen, a number two pencil, and a tortillon. You might need like an '08 to fill in some of the spaces, but that's optional. You can do that with your regular black pen. And so let's get started. We're going to set this up with our dot in each corner on our beautiful white paper. You just want to put a dot in each corner and then a line that goes from dot to dot all the way around. So we have our nice frame in there. And then we're going to work on our putting in our grid. So when we usually do a grid type, I'm going to just use a little sheet of paper here. So for our grids, we are making the horizontal lines usually, and then some vertical lines. And we get this lovely grid that we can then put our tangles off of that. So working with the grid, then we have all sorts of different tangles that we can make. For the alternative grid, we're playing with negative space. So for pinch is going to be kind of on a curve. So we are going to draw with our pencil just a curve like that. And then with our pen, we are going to start drawing squares. This one mostly relies on squares, although there may be some triangles at the end. So we're going to put in squares along our string there, kind of our guideline for this one. And I'm going to rotate this. I'm going to work from left to right. So we start by just putting in the square shape, square-ish shape in the corner here. And I say square-ish because we're working on a curve. So the top line here is going to be a little bit longer than the bottom. So our square is a little bit pinched, and maybe that's where the name pinch comes from. I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking about it here. And then we're going to leave a little bit of space and put in another square, roughly the same size. And then we just keep adding squares along our curve here. And like I said, they're a little bit pinched at the bottom and a little bit wider at the top. So if you're wondering what size my little squares are, they're maybe half an inch, a little bit more than a centimeter. And this goes pretty quickly. And I'm going to fit my last one in here. So we have a whole row of squares, and then we're going to make another row there. So we're still leaving space, but these are going to be smaller squares. And I'm keeping them kind of lined up with each other, but leaving space between them. And I try to keep the space as even as I can, the spacing between them. It takes a little bit of practice, but that's the fun of it, learning something new. And then you probably already guessed, we're going to do another row of them. And they're just getting smaller and smaller. But again, I'm continuing on the spacing there, trying to keep it as even as I can. And your squares might be bigger than mine or a little smaller, and that's perfectly fine. And then we're going to do another one. So they're getting pretty small here. And I think we can get a little smaller yet. And they're still barely squares. Like, I think for our final section, we're going to do triangles. So we've got this nice shape coming in here. We've got this grid, in a sense, our reticula. And for our last section here, we're just gonna do triangles because I just cannot fit in any more square shapes. And you might be able to go in a little bit smaller, but I'm just gonna leave it like that actually. So with our grid, and we have this negative space in here, um, this makes a lovely reticula. And this particular tangle pinch comes with its own fragment to put inside here. You could go and pick any other fragment that you'd like, but I'm just going to put in the fragment that's associated with this grid tangle. And it's real simple. In each square, we make an X, and then we just ink in the bottom triangle. And this is where you might need the wider pen to fill in. I'm just going to go ahead and make all the X's and then work on filling in afterwards. But you could choose a different fragment if you prefer, and I would love to hear what you choose if you decide to go that route. I'm just keeping it traditional here with this fragment. Another thing that would be cool is, and I'm going to ink mine in all in black, but you could actually have a different color for each row. And that would be really, really cool too. And it gets really small, which adds to the challenge of this one, even though it looks really simple, because the squares get so small, it does get challenging. And I'm not really gonna even attempt to put a fragment in these little triangles because it's just too small. But I am gonna go back and ink these in. And if you would like to use colored pencils or colored inks, that would be really cool. This does fill, this tangle fills a large space pretty quickly, so it's one of those if you're looking for something that's more geometric to fill in a larger space, this might be a good option. These alternative type of grid tangles are kind of new to me. I don't know how I missed them, but somehow I did. So it's always good to take the time and look at some of the original ones, especially if you're just new to Zentangle. There's so much out there, but it's really good to look at the classic ones. Well, I call them classic ones, kind of the original ones. So yeah, this is kind of new to me, but I like using the negative space. It's kind of interesting. So I think I will switch to the 08 and see if it's A little faster to fill in maybe. And you wouldn't have to do um, solid ink. You could just do like lines if you wanted to. So you could just go in there and do something like this. That would look cool too, but I'm gonna ink it in because I have done all the other ones. But I really do think it would look cool to use different colored inks. Or just one contrasting color for all of the filled in areas. So there we have something that looks like that, which is pretty cool. But now we're going to do some shading. So for this one, we've got the inked in triangle on the bottom of each of the squares, and we're going to shade in the two triangles on each side, leaving the top triangle empty or white. And you can shade them in any order that you want. But this particular fragment has the shading on the sides. Again, it gets really tiny, so you don't need a lot. I am probably going to add some graphite here in the center area because I just couldn't go any smaller with my triangles. And then another thing is to add graphite just along the curve there. If you want to, you don't have to. I kind of like it without because then you can see that negative space in there, but we'll just go ahead and add some graphite along there. And then I think for the triangles, I'll just add the graphite a little bit along the top. And I'm going to also add some along our our edges here. And then I think I'll come over here and just emphasize our frame a little bit. A little bit of a curve here. All right, now we can take our tortillon and do our blending. So I think I will just do the triangle areas first. Just blend that all in. So it looks smoother. And we will shade along the curve there. Don't really have to put any graphite over the black inked areas because that won't show up anyway. Just really kind of focusing on the areas, that negative space in between there. Just getting some graphite in there. I'm going to kind of push that up that way and go along the sides. Rotate around. Just kind of smooth everything out there. Here's something that looks like this. So this is our alternative grid with which forms a reticula, and we put our fragment inside. And as I mentioned before, this is typically the fragment that goes with this particular tangle pinch. And now we can put our initials on here. And I am just going to, now that I think about it, actually, if I had left one of these boxes blank, I could have put my initials in there, but I'm just going to put mine down here. Kind of in that corner. And I'm going to fill out our information, my name, and the date. This is our weekly tangle. We're 20, and that's for 2025. And this was Pinch by Zentangle. It's Pinch. And that's really it. Simple. There's so many possibilities if you switch out the fragment and try something different. And this looks great in a full circle too. So if you're working on a Zendala, you might want to try that. You wouldn't have to go all the way to the center. You could just do a couple rows of it. Um, so yeah, pinch, an alternative grid type of tangle. Really cool. I love using that negative space. And I think we'll do another one for week 21. Um, and just play around with that before we do switch to maybe some organic tangles. All right, I hope you enjoyed this. I learned something new, and I hope you did too. Play around with the fragments, play around with color, and also filling in different areas, different shapes. All right, this has been fun. Um, Thank you so much for following me and for being with me on this journey. And I'll see you next time. And remember, I love you guys. Take care. Bye.